The Long Road to True Happiness by WierdRandomTina. Chapter 20. Interference. Oh boy. With the foggy air finally cleared between them, and their friendship on a sturdier track, Branch had gained a slightly new confidence. Asking Poppy to meet him in the clearing had come off as a random request. But in reality, he had made a split-second decision to prepare a special picnic for her. She loved surprises, and he wanted to finally do something nice for her. He said thank you to her, but has never shown it. Branch had spent the previous day carefully planning it out, so when he arrived in the empty clearing almost 2 hours before lunchtime, setting up was nearly effortless, though it did take a bit of time thanks to his perfectionism. After clearing up any large twigs or stones in the area, he unrolled the blanket he'd bought yesterday, yellow and blue checkered with scattered pink flowers, that he would give to her afterwards. He had baked a deluxe banana cream pie, following a recipe book he'd rented from the library. He overheard at the campout that Poppy loved them, but didn't get to have them very often. He brought 2 insulated mugs with tea, herbal and berry with honey, as he'd given her before. He organised some varying vibrant flowers and fluffy fern springs into a lovely bouquet centrepiece. He wandered to the nearby woods to find and pick a bowl full of raspberries, with a hint of blueberries and blackberries. Lastly, he detoured farther away from the clearing, to retrieve some little white flowers to accent each corner of the blanket, plus a few apples. Meanwhile, invisible in the nearby bushes, was Creek. Observing the scene, he wasn't at all surprised by Branch's behaviour. He knew very well what the colourless loner was up to. Creek had witnessed Poppy and Branch parting ways on Wednesday, and heard how they decided to meet in this specific secluded clearing before lunch. Creek hadn't missed the dreamy look on Branch's usually miserable face when Poppy had left. And now, here he was, carefully fussing over what looked to be the beginnings of a picnic. Don't tell me that little hermit actually has a thing for my princess. Creek chuckled maliciously. How unfortunate for him. The blue-green-haired purple troll wasn't jealous in the least. There was nothing for Poppy to like about Branch, so there was no competition. But he didn't appreciate how much time she was wasting with that worthless troll. So Creek decided it was time to cause some conflict between them, confident it would result in Poppy giving up on Branch once and for all. That way, Creek could have her all to himself again. As it should be. Knowing that he still had some time before Poppy would arrive, Creek rushed back into the village, passing by the Flower Fun Festival that the princess had personally taken charge of setting up. Perfect. No one was in the area at the moment. Creek snuck over to the main banner, full of all kinds of intricate decorations. Standing behind one of the 2 poles that was fastened to securely too, he waited for a gust of wind, then cut the rope. With one anchor gone, the banner flapped roughly in the breeze, and quickly became tangled up in a nearby spruce tree. Double-checking that no trolls were around, Creek discreetly knocked over several fully stocked tables, making it look like some animal had disrupted them. Lastly, he climbed into a large oak tree and broke off plenty of twigs, scattering them around the whole festival area. Satisfied with the distraction, Creek slipped away, waiting patiently for the chaos to unfold. It didn't take too long for Poppy, along with the trolls who had been assisting her, Harper, Aspen, Heist, the green-haired orange skateboarder, red glitter troll Archer Pastry with violet hair, Moxie, and a stylish pretty pink glitter troll Gia, to excitedly return with the final decorations and plates of snacks. But their cheerful chatter quickly became bewildered gasps when they reached the festival location, to find much of it destroyed. After getting her scrambled thoughts together, Princess Poppy gave instructions to her helpers, and they spread out to begin the cleanup and reconstruction. Despite the need to get to work, she continued to stand where she was, dismayed and overwhelmed. Then a voice called her name, and she turned to find Creek running towards her, looking concerned. "Princess, are you all right?" He took her pink hands in his as he surveyed the damaged area. "What in Troll's name happened here, then?" I don't Poppy whimpered, moving closer to her friend for comfort. We were only gone for 20 minutes. Everything was in order. And then we came back and it looked like this. Her eyes were full of distress as she continued to creak. This is no good. The festival takes place in less than an hour. It's going to take at least that much time to fix everything, even if we did find more helpers. We have to redo the whole banner, replace the table decorations and dishes, clean up the debris. And then there's Branch. To Creek's displeasure, Poppy was very worried about the grey troll's well-being, even more so than usual. But he made sure his expression remained soft, giving no hint to his true emotions. I was supposed to visit him today in... Oh no! In 15 minutes! I have to cancel. But I don't have time to leave here and tell him. I can't just not show up. Creek maintained his best innocent face, interrupting her with a gentle lavender hand on her cheek. Don't fret over that, Princess. You have enough to deal with. I'll go and inform Branch of the situation. I'm sure he'll understand. You focus on the dilemma and getting it under control here. His fake sweet tone convinced Poppy, who gratefully replied, Really? Oh, thank you so much, Creek. She hugged him quickly and then was already backing away as she continued. Tell him I'll stop by early tomorrow morning instead. You'll find him in a little clearing a few tree lengths past his bunker. Thank you. Creek's plan was put in motion as the cheery, overly trusting princess obliviously ran off. By the time he reached the clearing, Creek discovered a now fully prepared picnic, but no Branch. So he quietly searched around, soon finding him beyond a couple of large pine trees. He was holding a basket with a couple of apples while picking more with his black hair, carefully inspecting each one. Black hair? Who ever heard of a troll with such dreary features? Hardly a troll at all. Then again, I suppose it does represent his negative aura perfectly. Casually, Creek strolled out into the open. Hearing a noise, Branch instinctively spun around, and his look of surprise instantly hardened into a scowl when he saw who was there. Meanwhile, Creek pretended this encounter was purely by chance. Oh, hello there, Branch. Beautiful day, isn't it? Yeah, aren't your pointers? Despite Branch's sour attitude, Creek was struggling to contain a smug grin. I decided it would be beneficial to take a refreshing stroll through the most tranquil part of the forest. Branch rolled his eyes at him before turning his attention back to the apple tree. Good for you, he groaned with icy sarcasm. Creek expected such a response, so he continued, unbothered. Indeed it is. However, as lovely as it is chatting with you, I suppose it is time for me to mosey back to the village. After all, I do not wish to be late for my lunch date with Princess Poppy. Branch's entire body visibly went rigid. The apple he had secured fell to the ground. Creek watched with pure satisfaction, silent for a few seconds, to allow the grey troll to fully absorb the words before elaborating. I was beyond delighted when she said yes. Poppy's always so busy tending to everyone, being the remarkable princess she is. And it was such a relief to hear her say that she had nothing important planned around lunch today. Branch hadn't moved, other than his shoulders moving up and down from heavy breathing. Creek finished off. Anyway, I best be off. I'd hate to leave Poppy waiting. Have a spectacular day, Branch. If that's even possible for you. Namaste. After making a convincing exit, the purple troll hung around, unable to leave without seeing the inevitably entertaining reaction. Branch was bewildered. A date? Nothing important planned. He shook his head. That didn't sound like Poppy. Creek's lying. There's no way Poppy would do that. I don't believe it. Picking a final apple, he headed back to the clearing, eyebrows still furrowed from the arrogance of that hairball. The grey hermit's reaction did not disappoint, looking very torn between not wanting to believe what he had heard, and fear that what he heard was true. Satisfied, Creek returned to the village and sought out Poppy, who was hastily reorganizing materials for the banner. As some extra assistants arrived, The magenta troll took a quick break to question Creek. "Did you find him? How'd he take it?" Creek lowered his head and said, regretfully, "Not very well, I'm afraid. When I told him you couldn't make it due to an unforeseen issue in the village, he was mad that you had gotten me to relay the message, instead of you telling him in person." Poppy began to look even more distraught than she already was. "I tried to explain that you could not leave, but it only aggravated him more. He stormed off like a buffalo in a rage, saying something about how he's sick of you acting like you don't care about him." Poppy's entire face clouded in with confusion and hurt, so Creek delicately put his arm around her. "I'm so sorry, Princess. You don't deserve that kind of treatment. You are the most extraordinary troll with the biggest heart, and it's his loss if he can't recognize that." Poppy leaned into her friend's shoulder, completely at a loss for words. That didn't sound like Branch. What about when he was so willingly accepted the change of schedule a couple of weeks ago? What about the major heart-to-heart on Wednesday? I guess he is known for random anger outbursts, but... Finally, she found her voice, realizing she needed to get back to work. "Okay, thank you, Creek. I guess I'll try to talk to him later. Maybe I'll have some time after lunch." "That may not be a great idea," Creek countered carefully. "I do not doubt your ability to brighten up dull situations, but in this case, perhaps it would be best to give him a chance to cool off." "Yeah, you're right." Poppy saw the sense in that. If she tried to reason with Branch now, it could escalate the problem instead. Giving him space and solitude always seemed to be the better option. "I'll wait until tomorrow morning. No big deal. No big deal at all." But it was a very big deal to her. Creek never strayed from Poppy's side. He helped her rebuild the Flower Fun Festival. Then, after attended the festival with her, he took her out for lunch at a little diner at the opposite end of the village. Not as an actual date as he had boasted to Branch, but Poppy was spending time with him instead of that grey hermit. So it was certainly a win for Creek. Poppy was happy to have Creek with her. Or was she? She wasn't not happy, but Creek had a strong reputation of being able to lift everyone's spirits and calm their nerves. Especially hers. But this time, she was numb to his charm. The entire day she couldn't stop wishing she had been able to visit Branch, or at least talk to him for a minute, and had to repeatedly convince herself that everything would be resolved with him. This time she was struggling to keep up her fake smile. Thankfully, anyone who noticed her lack of cheerfulness didn't question it, believing the festival disaster was fully to blame. Meanwhile, Branch had to repeatedly convince himself that Creek had been lying. Poppy would never be like that. Creek was just being a pain in the hair, as always. If she was going to council, she'd tell me, like she has before. She shows up. She always does. She cares about me. But as hours passed, Branch was still alone on a picnic blanket. The sun travelled across the clouding-in sky. The tea had grown cold. The flowers were wilting. The chocolate on the pie was starting to smudge into the white icing. "I don't believe this. It can't be true. She wouldn't. After all she's done for me. After all she said the other day. Something must have happened to keep her in the village. This is just a coincidence." His spark of hope at the idea was quickly replaced with deep concern. After all the devastating nightmares he's experienced, it was far too easy to imagine the sweet pink troll lying injured somewhere in the woods, or caught in some unsafe fun contraption in the village. Without a second thought, Branch raced towards the village. "I need to find her. I need to know she's all right, that this is just some random royal emergency, or some silly party mishap." As much as he hated to get anyone else involved, he realized he may have to ask someone about the princess's whereabouts. He hadn't the slightest idea of where to start looking, and it could take all day to locate her on his own.
I suppose I could say I have a message for her.
Before he could fret too much over how that excuse turned out, he had reached the village outskirts. For the first time in his life, luck was finally on Branch's side. He almost immediately spotted her distinctive magenta ponytail, only a couple tree lengths or so among the crowd of dining trolls. But his split second of relief and luck vanished when the group in front of Poppy shifted, revealing another distinctive troll seated at her table. Branch's heart nearly stopped. He couldn't believe his eyes. There she was, having lunch with him, just as he had said. Without caring who saw him or who he bumped into, Branch fled the scene without looking back. There was no denying it now. Creek had been telling the truth. Poppy had abandoned him. Branch stormed back into the bunker. He barged through the bushes, snapping any and all twigs in his way. He kicked up a few nearby trees, picked up a few rocks and hurled them into the forest, until his feet and shoulders ached. At first, Branch was more angry than upset. Angry at Creek, angry at Poppy, angry at himself, angry at everything.
This is what I get for being hopeful. She's only friendly with me in order to maintain our positive princess image. All that heartfelt stuff she said to me, she probably said to dozens of trolls. She doesn't mean a single word of it. And how could she? I'm nothing but a waste of her time. And yet, I continue to wish that she cared. I continue to care.
As soon as he stepped foot in the bunker, heartache overwhelmed Branch and drained him of his enraged energy. He dragged himself over to his couch, unable and unwilling to go any further. He wouldn't have been so hurt if Poppy had just told him the truth. Hear her happily tell him that she's going on a date with Creek would have been painful, yes, but it would have been better than her not telling him anything, especially after emphasizing that she would never leave him hanging and that she valued him.
Maybe she was afraid I'd get mad at her again, like I did when she first talked about Creek.
The unfortunate timing upset Branch even more. If it had been any other regular day, it wouldn't have bothered him so much. But he had finally found the courage to do something special for her. He made certain it was perfectly planned out and perfectly executed. He was looking forward to making her happy, almost feeling excited about it. And then she didn't show up, because she had found something better to do. Which still didn't make sense to Branch. But then another probable theory entered his mind.
Maybe she didn't toss me aside on purpose. Maybe she was so overjoyed at being with Creek that she completely forgot about our visit.
This was why Branch always strived to avoid connections with other trolls. Getting close to others only causes oversensitive feelings, and love only ever leads to grief. He buried his face in his pillow, refusing to openly sob over something so trivial, so predictable. There was still a tiny part of him that said something about how this wasn't adding up, but he was too emotionally exhausted to try and work out what it could be. It really didn't matter anyway. Saturday morning, Poppy arrived at the wooden hatch door. She was kind of sleepy, as she had spent the night fretting more than she would like to admit. And when she finally did drift off, she was jolted awake by a nightmare about Branch despising her. Poppy knocked and waited, but there was no sign of him. I hope he's not ignoring me or avoiding me. Luckily, Branch had taught her the passcode to get in a few visits ago, so she warily let herself in. The living room was empty. Branch, she called softly. Are you in here? Complete silence. The kitchen was empty. She was about to check the storage rooms down the hall, when her eyes drifted over to his bedroom, and she finally spotted him. He was lying on his bed, his back toward her. She let out a sigh of relief before taking a few tiptoed steps towards the door. "Branch, you awake?"
"Yeah."
His mumbled response was deflated. "He must be tired. You wouldn't still be mad, right? I know this is a lot earlier than I usually visit, but I thought it would be easier than trying to find a break-in without all the events happening this afternoon. There are 3 weddings, 5 birthday parties, and a village-wide scrapbook competition in addition to all the regular activities. Can you believe it?" Branch remained silent. He didn't turn around to face her. He didn't do anything. Poppy began to feel uneasy. "Branch, is everything okay?" He made a noise that might have been a response, or might have been nothing. "Are you still mad at me for yesterday?" He rolled onto his back, but fixed his gaze onto the ceiling.
"I'm not mad. Just disappointed."
Poppy lowered her head, her ponytail starting to droop. Disappointed was almost worse than being mad. "I'm really, really sorry for bailing on you. But something urgent came up in the village, so I..."
"Yeah, I heard."
Well, she didn't forget. Guess it was fully intentional. The barbs in his tone were unmistakable, and pierced right into Poppy's heart. "Why are you saying it like that? I thought you'd be more understanding."
"I would have been, if you had just told me what was going on."
His muttered comment was shaky, though he remained on his back. He shifted his head so she could no longer see the side of his face. With a frown invading her face, Poppy was struggling to keep from whimpering. "Branch, I don't know what else you want me to say. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you in person, but I couldn't leave the village. That's why I sent Creek to tell you."
Creek. With an image of that infuriating slime ball now at the front of Branch's mind, he whipped around and blurted out, "So you sent Creek to inform me that you'd prefer to spend lunchtime with him instead of me?"
Wait, what? Did Poppy just hear him right? What are you talking about? I never said that. That's not even true. I spent lunchtime with Creek, yes, but only because he said that you were... Something was not adding up. She couldn't pinpoint it, but none of this was making any sense. Hearing her trail off into mid-sentence, Branch watched as her eyes unfocused and her pretty pink features scrunched into a troubled confusion. His own confusion was growing too now, as he started to suspect that this situation wasn't at all what it had seemed a minute ago. After several seconds that were longer than several minutes, Poppy looked directly at him and spoke. "What exactly did Creek say to you?" Branch was a bit alarmed by her unusual seriousness, and unsure of where this inquiry was going. Slowly, he sat up, hanging his legs over the edge of the bed.
"He said that you had agreed to go out to lunch with him because you had nothing important going on."
Poppy felt her heart drop to the floor. He didn't mention anything about me having to rebuild the Flower Fun Festival?" Branch shrugged and shook his head. It was crystal clear he had no idea of what she was talking about. "Or that I couldn't make it because of a sudden issue in the village that needed to be dealt with right away? Or that I would stop by this morning instead? He didn't say anything like that?" Another blank head shake. The bewildered princess opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The gears in her brain had screeched to a halt at this disturbing news. It was Branch who spoke up.
"So, you did want to visit me? But you couldn't because you had unexpected official business to take care of?"
"Yes!" Poppy almost wailed. He sounded so vulnerable, so desperate. "And that is exactly what I told Creek to tell you. I don't get it. Why would he..." Poppy pondered for a moment.
"Why?"
"He volunteered to give Branch my message. No questioning me, no judging me for being concerned about him, no trying to convince me not to bother. He's never cared about Branch being left out. In fact, he usually encourages it. Did Creek do this on purpose? As the puzzle pieces started falling into place, Poppy felt a very uncomfortable feeling in the pit of her stomach. One she's only ever experienced a couple of times in her entire life. Distrust. But she wasn't one to assume the worst. Maybe this was just a silly misunderstanding. Creek was always the troll to resolve drama and tension. So she was having a hard time believing he would intentionally cause some. Either way, she had to get to the bottom of this. Branch, I'm going to go and find Creek. I need to have a talk with him. I'll see you sometime later today, okay? Poppy began to head for the elevator, but almost instantly screeched to a halt. In a blur of pink and blue, she scurried over to him and threw her arms around his neck, murmured, I love spending time with you, and you are important to me. And then rushed out of the exit. Branch was frozen during the entire scene, and for several minutes later. Creek was contentedly watering his garden when a wonderfully familiar voice called his name. He spun around, filled with joy to see his beautiful Princess Poppy running towards him. When she reached him, he gave her his usual charming greeting and moved forward to wrap his arms lovingly around her, and was a bit put off when she didn't return the gesture. She just stood there like a statue. He pulled away.
What's troubling you, Poppy? I can sense you have something on your mind.
I do, actually. She wasn't going to jump to conclusions. She always wanted to believe in hearing all sides of the story. She didn't want to accuse Creek of lying. She didn't want to believe he would lie. But she certainly didn't believe that Branch lied. It's just a misunderstanding. Poppy took a deep breath and started over. I wanted to ask you something. About yesterday. What exactly did you tell Branch?
Creek was mellow as he answered, Well, I began with how you wouldn't be able to meet with him, due to an accident that occurred, and needed to be taken care of immediately. But he was furious that you would send a messenger instead of tell him in person, no matter how much I emphasized that it was impossible for you to leave the village.
His expression and voice were sympathetic, yet strangely void of real emotion. So that's exactly what you said to him? Poppy clarified.
More or less, yes.
A smirk. She caught a brief little smirk on Creek's face.
I can't remember the precise phrase I used. Something along those lines.
Okay, so you didn't tell him that I chose to spend lunchtime with you instead of him, implying that I ditched him on purpose because he's nothing important? A jolt of dismay shot through Poppy as Creek's eyes opened a bit wider, and his lavender face turned a few tones paler.
No, I didn't say that. He must have gotten the wrong idea.
You're lying. Poppy expected Creek to deny it further, or attempt another excuse. But he couldn't even try. He was rendered speechless, like a trolling caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Her stomach flipped over. Her worst suspicions were rapidly being confirmed. You lied to him. And you lied to me. Creek had not seen that coming. He had predicted Branch would get outraged and refuse to have anything to do with her ever again. And then Poppy would realise how terrible of a troll he is. And then she would quit the frequent visits and lighten up with being excessively friendly with him. Creek never anticipated that she would discover the truth, especially so easily and directly. Even though Poppy didn't require a spoken confession, since his tense silence spoke volumes, she was determined to get him to explain. Her voice cracked. Why? Why would you do that, Creek? I trusted you!
Because I don't approve of you investing so much time and effort in him, Poppy. He's toxic.
Creek's voice was level and adamant. the forced sympathy in his eyes long gone, replaced with a mild expression. Well, there it was. An indirect confession. Did that make her feel better or worse?
No, he isn't! He's a great friend, and you purposefully hurt his feelings!
Oh, Poppy, be reasonable. He doesn't have feelings, except hatred.
Oh, I need to be reasonable? You've never even bothered to get to know him. Or even try. The rest of the snack pack has given him a chance. He's changed, and there's so much more to him than meets the eye. You're judging a book by its cover.
If the cover isn't very appealing, the pages can't be either.
Poppy was not angry. It wasn't emotionally possible for her. But what she was feeling now was a pretty close second.
How can you be so narrow-minded?
Creek's mouth was on the verge of turning into a pout, and he let out a little sigh.
Poppy, you're always more than willing to reserve afternoons for him. Yet when I request a minute of your time, you blow me off for some reason or another. I fail to see how that's fair. I deserve your attention far more than that guy does.
The princess couldn't believe her ears. It was getting harder and harder to keep her voice level.
I have never blown you off. I've gone out of my way for you more times than anyone else, even more than Branch. And half the time when I have a spare moment and want to spend it with you, you say you're busy.
She shook her head at Creek's childish, petty behaviour.
Is that really what this was all about? Jealousy?
I'm not jealous, but I am hurt.
Did he actually just whine at me?
Poppy wasn't falling for any of his pity party talk this time.
You have no reason to be hurt in all of this. Why can't you be more understanding?
I really have tried to be. But you wasting your positivity with someone like Branch is beyond me.
Branch is more understanding than you've ever been.
It was harsh, but it was true. There was a flicker of cold fire in Creek's purple eyes, but his voice remained nonchalant as ever.
Very well, if that's how you feel. Then why are you wasting your precious time here with me? Why don't you run off and spend some quality time with Branch instead?
You know what? That sounds like a good idea.
And with that, Poppy took off, without looking back, frustrated, upset, baffled, shaken. As she clumsily made her way through the bushes, her mind was spinning with varying memories of Creek. Several images of some of their most special moments together flashed through her vision. But now, those memories only created discomfort and heartache. He didn't care about hurting Branch. He didn't even care about hurting her. Creek's only concern was how he felt and what he wanted. He only cared about her when it was convenient for him. But why was he suddenly acting so selfish? Or maybe it wasn't so stubborn. And maybe it wasn't an act. Maybe being charming and tranquil was the act, and it had been blindsiding her all this time. Poppy recalled how she had cancelled so many of her plans for him, several of them being rather important. Yet, never once did he do the same for her. She was always the one to apologise, even when she wasn't at fault. All he ever did was try to make her feel guilty. There were so many minor incidents with Creek that it had seemed like nothing at the time. Silly little things that she had easily brushed off. But connecting all these dots now created a picture that was awfully clear. There were a lot of things Poppy could deal with, but someone who blatantly lies for their own self-gain to purposefully hurt others was not one of them. Now she was an extremely forgiving troll, willing to give everyone a second chance. But how could she forgive a troll who won't even act like he did anything wrong? Poppy intended to head straight to the bunker, but in her distraction she veered off course, and ended up in the forestry beyond it. Glancing around, she realised she was very near the little clearing surrounded by oak trees. where Branch had asked her to meet him. Instead of redirecting her path, she continued on, feeling drawn to the location. When she reached it, Poppy was surprised to find it wasn't empty. There was a ruffled blanket, bunches of wilted, dried-up flowers, scattered berries from a knocked-over bowl, a round container with remnants of food currently being picked over by 2 large birds. Both flew away when they noticed the presence of a troll. Poppy instantly recognized the plain wooden utensils and dishes, and covered her mouth with shock.
No wonder he's so upset. He had a picnic ready for us and everything.
Her eyes began to mist up.
See, Creek, he's an incredible friend. And you're...
The princess's natural response to any situation was to find the good. But she was having a hard time justifying Creek's actions. Okay, he was upset and acting out, but there were a dozen better ways he could have dealt with those feelings. He'd been so unfair, and here Branch had been so sweet, and then was so crushed when he thought she had chosen not to show. Emotionally exhausted, the princess sat down in the middle of the clearing, burying her face into her hands. Meanwhile, now that Branch's mind was in a more stable place, he decided he should really clean up the stuff he left in the clearing. Poppy had said she would see him later, so he had assumed he still had time. Besides, it wouldn't take too long. He left a note on the hatch door, just in case. Branch did not want to risk missing her. After everything that went down this morning and yesterday, they both needed closure. Not that Branch needed proof that Creek was directly behind this, but it made sense that Poppy would. She was the most pure-hearted troll in the forest, and would never come to a conclusion without hearing the full story. Prologue, epilogue, prequel, and sequel. When Branch reached the clearing to find said magenta princess sitting right there with her face buried into her knees, he had taken a few seconds to decide whether she was really there, or if this was some kind of vivid imagination.
Poppy?
At the sound of the familiar, smooth voice, her head shot up.
Branch!
Looking up and sounding like she was about to cry, she sprang up and launched at him with a hug, nearly knocking him off balance.
Branch, I'm so sorry! What Creek did to you! What he said! That was... I had no idea he would be so...
Hey, it's okay. You're not to blame.
Branch soothed her, letting his arms settle lightly around her.
You aren't responsible for his actions.
Even he would never have suspected Creek to stoop this low. He was a phony, yes, but this was downright deceitful. Being a dirtbag to Branch was one thing, but to betray Princess Poppy?
I'm sorry for doubting you. I should have known you'd never reject me like that. I was just being paranoid, as usual.
Since when does he listen to anything Creek says? Poppy sniffled, shifting her grasp to snuggle closer into Branch. Almost subconsciously, his arms curled snugly around her small form, holding her comfortably against him. This hug was much more relaxed than the first one they had shared. This one with equal affection and mutual comfort. And it was working. Branch's heart felt as light as a feather, reconfirming without a shadow of a doubt that her inspiring words had not only been true, but intended specifically for him. He wished he could purely enjoy this hug, but was more focused on healing Poppy's despair. He sympathized for her. Untrustworthy dirtbag or not, Creek was still her close friend whom she had trusted. Losing him would hurt no matter how it happened. It felt so good to be in Branch's arms, surrounded by his one-of-a-kind, gentle compassion. Poppy couldn't help wondering for a moment how many times Creek had lied to her. But right then, it didn't matter. The thought didn't even really bother her, for there was something about Branch's warm embrace that was just hypnotizing. It melted away each and every one of her bad feelings. After several minutes, Poppy moved back enough to look Branch in the eyes. but close enough to let her hands settle into his. She noticed his colours didn't appear as dull as usual. Light blue eyes, slightly turquoise skin, and a very deep indigo blue hair. Kind of like on Wednesday. Also, unlike usual, Branch didn't avoid her fond gaze. He kept his eyes locked onto her, his hands gently gripping hers with a delicate smile. Poppy could feel herself getting lost in those handsome eyes. Reluctantly, she shifted her gaze to drift over to the picnic remnants in the centre of the clearing. So, do you have picnics often? Or was this a one-time thing you made especially for us? She already knew the answer, but decided to play dumb to see how he'd respond. Branch squirmed in embarrassment, instinctively wanting to back away, but unable to under her heartfelt grasp. So he looked off to the side instead. I just thought you'd like it. What did you have prepared? Looks like some berries, apples, flowers. What else? Not much. Just, some of my herbal berry tea. And, well, I also... The rest of his statement was too hushed for Poppy to make out, so she politely asked him to repeat it. And so he did. I made a deluxe banana cream pie. Poppy's heart fluttered. Branch couldn't care less about pies. He didn't even own most of the ingredients necessary to make one. He went out of his way exclusively for her. That sounds wonderful, Branch. Thank you for going through all this trouble for me. Her expression clouded as she added, I'm really sorry I didn't get to enjoy any of it. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't trouble. You deserve to be given something special. You go through more trouble for me. Maybe I can do it for you another time. Each of these thoughts almost made it out of his mouth, but his final response ended up being nothing more than a crooked smile, finally tongue-tied from their extended close proximity. Eventually Poppy released his hands, but only to resume the sweet hug. She returned her head to Branch's shoulder, but this time faced him so her forehead rested against his cheek. He hoped she wouldn't notice the extra heat it was giving off. She did, and it caused her to let out a blissful sigh. After another minute or two, or 3, passed, and Poppy finally ended the hug, but linked her hands with his again. Not ready to let him go just yet. You give really nice hugs, she complimented softly. I do. Branch was searching for any sarcasm in her tone, but then remembered the upbeat princess didn't do sarcasm. I thought I'd be rusty. No, not at all. For someone who hates hugs, you're very good at them. It's not that I hate hugs. That is, I don't love them, but it's mostly hug time that I dislike. At Poppy's blank expression, Branch explained further. Hugs at a specific time, without any real purpose, aren't as meaningful, because they're more of a forced habit than a sincere gesture of affection. Everyone does it only because they feel they have to. Poppy blinked. Huh. I never thought of it like that. She loved hugs so much that she wanted them as often as possible, for any or no reason. But thinking about it now, the pink troll realised she was guilty of taking special hugs for granted. The soothing ones from her father, the loving ones from her friends, the rare ones from Branch. Wow, he's really opened my eyes and taught me some new values. Resuming her smile, and still grasping onto each other's hands, Poppy clarified, So, then, you're okay with hugs now, or... Branch shrugged. Well, I wouldn't go that far. They're still not my favourite thing, and I don't want one every 5 seconds from every random troll who crosses my path. But once in a while from you is fine. Oh, Fungus, was that out loud? Wasn't it? Judging by her coy smile, yes it was. Well, you can hug me any time you want, even if it's not hug time. Something about her alluring tone made Branch's grey turquoise face instantly flush purple. When she giggled warmly, he couldn't help but join in with a few light chuckles of his own. Her positivity truly was contagious. After a minute, their playful amusement died down, and Poppy said something that Branch had never imagined she'd ever say to him. "Thank you for being here for me. You always manage to make me feel better. I hope you realise that." Without hesitation, Branch murmured, "And you do the same for me." His inner and outer voices were getting mixed up, apparently. He bashfully glanced away from her affectionate smile. And then, the beautiful pink troll did something Branch would never have expected in a million years. She tilted her head and leaned forward to reward his cheek with a kiss. Sweet and gentle, but more than a friendly little peck. His reaction was a stupefied, gaping face, as his heart cartwheeled and the rest of his insides melted into a puddle. He barely even noticed when she thanked him again, said a cute goodbye, and headed off. Branch cleaned up the clearing, but was moving at a snail's pace. He made it back to the bunker, but stumbled over his own feet 5 or 6 times. For the next hour, he sat on his couch, staring at the ceiling, his hand over the cheek where Poppy's soft lips had touched. Branch would have been smitten enough from all the hugging alone, but then she had to add that little detail. Once his languid thoughts were able to refocus, he dedicated half his afternoon to writing in his journal. He hadn't updated since Wednesday, when he thought she was better off without him, but then she assured him otherwise, and they had agreed to meet in the clearing. It was a challenge for Branch to accurately describe the soothing electricity that had flowed through his upper body when her arms were squeezing him tight, and the gentle fire that was still burning on his cheek. There were too many words, or maybe too few words. Eventually, he turned to his other journal, and finished off his romantic thoughts through lengthy poetry. Poppy felt giddy as she skipped back to the village, all unpleasant thoughts of Creek gone for the time being, as she sang a bunch of joyful songs. She couldn't really believe she did that to Branch, though the action had been fully intentional. She had also been severely caught up in the moment. His kind words, his shy handsome face right there in front of hers, his comforting embrace still lingering on her body. But Poppy did not regret her split-second decision to kiss him. In fact, she was very satisfied that she did. What satisfied her even more is the fact that Branch let her. He didn't flinch away or appear uncomfortable or annoyed by her sudden, more intimate gesture. Just stunned. And not even in a bad way. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh boy, that was a mixed bag. Creek. Oh boy, your days with Poppy are numbered. And frankly, over already, if you think about it. Because that's vandalism. Vandalism and manipulation and emotional abuse all piled into one, and not even taking accountability out of jealousy. Grade A jerk, if you believe me. But it ended very nicely. Poppy kisses Branch. These two. Oh my god. It is Black Cat and Golden Retriever energy. I will say it again. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified if I never upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.